What's going on, everybody? It's Barmine from Barmine Tech, and today we're going to be discussing the differences between Pi-hole and Adguard Home and which one you should use. Now, I made videos in the past about Pi-hole. I made a video about Adguard Home. I used both of them, and we're going to go over the differences between the two of them, how I think the two of them are similar, and we're going to go over finally which one you should use. So let's get right into it. So to start, here you can see I have my Adguard Home, and then I have my Pi-hole that I actually use. I actually use both of these currently at the moment. So one goes, my Pi-hole set for my router as its DNS, and Adguard set for one of my VMs that I use. But the good thing about both of these are that we can host both of them out of Docker templates. So they're similar in the aspect that it's able to do both of that. So here we have Adguard, and I come over here to Pi-hole. See, I could host Pi-hole out of that as well. I could also host both of these off of a Raspberry Pi. Now this one looks a little bit different, it has a PoE hat on it, but Adguard can be installed on a Raspberry Pi as well as Pi-hole. And we could also make a dedicated Linux VM if we wanted to, and both of them could run off of that as well. Typically we're not going to see that. We're going to see them run off of Raspberry Pi or a Docker container because it makes the most sense to do it that way. So for the deployment of Adguard Home and Pi-hole, it is very similar, is the fact that I could just go in here, choose the container and deploy it, and we do the same thing with Pi-hole, which I think is one of the easier methods to do it. Sometimes installing Pi-hole is easier doing a Raspberry Pi just because that's what it was meant to do natively. It does work on a Docker container, but sometimes you might run into a little bit of an issue with the DNS on the Docker machine, like the actual OS, which I've had a couple of times in the past that I need to rewrite the DNS settings, whereas in Adguard it just installed, I had no issues with it. I'm not saying that that's going to be everybody's problem, but sometimes you might need to adjust the DNS settings to use Pi-hole on a Docker container. So if we move off the actual deployment of the two types of software, we could actually look at it in the bigger way. Adguard Home is actually made by a company. It's a privately made software, and Pi-hole is open source. It's made by the community. It has a large community following, where Adguard doesn't. It's growing, but it's not there yet. And like I said, it's made by a company, so some people have a bit of an issue with that. It puts a little bit of a bitter taste in their mouth because it's an actual company making it versus an open source community where everybody's collaborating together on it to make the best software they feel they can. They feel Adguard might not have that capability since it's made by a company. Personally, with Adguard being made by a company, I haven't ran into any issues with it yet. I mean, you can see over here, some people have an issue with the privacy, the fact that Adguard might be able to take your data and stuff like that. And they actually list over here that we may collect data and explain when they use and stuff like that. So you can read through that if you're worried about the privacy notice. Whereas in Pi-hole, if I scroll down, I don't have a privacy notice. I'm pretty sure that Pi-hole doesn't collect data. I could be wrong, but let's see. See, if I come over here and I search the actual Pi-hole documentation, if I search privacy, I'm not having an article jump right out at me. Like I said, it's open source, it's community based, so it's not like how a company has the benefit of gathering data on you and selling it, whereas the community isn't going to. I could be wrong, Pi-hole might collect your data and sell it. It might be a feature they have, but I can't find it right here directly on this article, so that's another difference that people are going to argue between the difference between Adguard Home and Pi-hole, that it's made by a company, Adguard is, and they're going to collect your data, where Pi-hole is open source and community based, and they're not. Next thing we want to talk about is the actual user interface. So if we look at Adguard Home, this is the UI that it's provided. It's the web portal that you could use to actually access and manage your Adguard Home server. So you can see it's pretty straightforward. It has a lot of information right on the home page. And pretty much a lot of the similar stuff that Pi-hole is going to have. It's going to show you your DNS queries, what was blocked, but it also is going to show you, because it's going to target from malicious sites or phishing threads, stuff like that. So it's going to tell you like malware is blocked, phishing. And if you have it set to filter adult content, it could actually tell you how many websites it blocked on that as well. So it's just more information that shows you that Pi-hole doesn't. When we come over here, we have the general statistics, so it's still going to show you your DNS queries. It's pretty much going to show you everything up here on top again, just in a different format and a little bit more information to it. So if you have like safe search and forced, it's going to show you that. and then it's also going to tell you the average processing time. So I'm pretty sure that's just how long it takes for a DNS request. So it's telling me right now it's 106 milliseconds for a DNS request for me, which it's good to know. Usually on both these softwares, the DNS requests are going to be pretty quick, so it's not something you have to worry about. It's going to show you your clients, and this is my only client I have for the Adguard Home server. And then it's going to show you your query domain. So if you want to see what's going on the most, you can see these are your domains you're hitting, and these are the ones that are being blocked the most. If I come into Pi-hole and I look at their homepage, it's going to give a lot of the same information that Adguard Home is going to provide, and that's because both of these services do pretty much the same thing in just different techniques. It's going to tell me all my queries, what was blocked, but it's not going to show me like the phishing and malware that might have been caught, and it's not going to show adult site content filtering. That's because Pi-hole doesn't directly block it natively. You would have to add it off of block domains or a block list somehow. If we come over here, we can see our queries for the last 24 hours and the activity, and then we also again will break down into our query types. So it's going to tell you what kind of records we're hitting, and the upstream servers. So I could actually come over here and I can see, you know, DNS for Google is hitting the most, stuff like that. We can see our permitted domains, so we can see the domains that we're actually able to hit, which similar to Adguard Home, what's being blocked, and then our top client. So this Pi-hole instance actually is being used off of my router. This is my router's default DNS. You can see it's actually showing way more clients than the Adguard Home is. It's just because how I have it currently configured. If you had yours configured as your router's DNS, it would have a lot more clients than I do as well for Adguard Home. It's just how I have it currently set up. So if we get into the more of the differences between them configuration wise, we can see it this way. So we come over to settings and general settings. In here we're able to enable different features. So a feature that Pi-hole doesn't have that Adguard does is we can do stuff like browse and security, parental controls, and safe search. This isn't something that Pi-hole can do natively. I was looking into it, and I believe you could do it with some third-party configurations, and you could force like a safe search or parental controls, but it's not something that it does natively, but Adguard Home does. So it's a little bit different, and it looks like it's easier to configure than me. You can just check off the box, and then you're going to be able to use it. So we have that. We can change our log retention, which I'm pretty sure Pi-hole has as well. If we come over to the next one, we have our DNS options, and we can actually select multiple upstream DNS servers, and they provide them with us over here. So remember, they would give us the list, and we can open it up, and we can come in here, we can select all of the known DNS providers that we want to use. So if we wanted to use Adguard's DNS, we can select theirs. If you only wanted to use Cloudflare's DNS, we can come over here, and we can only select Cloudflare's DNS as if we wanted to. And another feature that they offered was the DNS over HTTPS. So we're going to talk about that next in a minute. But if we come over here, that's how we would add our upstream DNS servers. So if we do come into Pi-hole, we actually can select different upstream DNS servers. Typically by default it's going to have Google selected, but these are the options that are given, and you can come over here and you can select Cloudflare. I prefer to use Cloudflare. Those are the ones that I've used for the longest, but you can also use over here, as well as you can use custom upstream DNS servers. So you can select different upstream DNS servers, but Adguard Home offers way more availability. As you can see, there are a ton of different upstream DNS servers you could use. I know Pi-hole does have the custom ones, but you can only select 4, and there's no limit over here with Adguard Home. Sorry. So you know, you can just put everything into a list. So it is a big difference that Adguard Home is going to offer you way more availability for upstream DNS servers than Pi-hole is. Our next thing we're going to talk about is the encryption. So Adguard Home does offer encryption over HTTPS. So for doing this, we're going to be able to do DNS over HTTPS. And if it's something that you're not familiar with, it's pretty much going to make it that all outbound DNS queries are going to be encrypted. It's going to use HTTPS, so it's going to go directly to the DNS provider. Encrypted meaning that nobody's going to be able to see what was going on. In theory, your ISP shouldn't be able to see any of your DNS queries or anybody else because they're encrypted over HTTPS. This is an option that Adguard Home has, but Pi-hole doesn't exactly have natively. It would be another thing that you would have to add in with some third-party tools. It's a nice feature that Adguard Home has. It might not be something you're interested in. If you're interested in security and you know, keeping your home more secure and protected, this could be a good option to use Adguard Home for. Next feature we're going to talk about is the client settings, and in both softwares, in Pi-hole and Adguard Home, you can make clients, so when you want to make groups of devices or anything else, you can. So you would be able to just come in here and add a client. It's a little bit different in Adguard than it is in Pi-hole. You would just be able to name it, so we could just do test, and then you could add the identifier, so if you wanted to choose it by the MAC address or the IP address, you could. So I could just add in my IP address and make a client. Similarly, in Pi-hole, we can do this as well. We have known clients, so it's actually going to pull the clients that typically query data off of Pi-hole. So if it sees that you're making DNS queries, you're going to be a known client. You can just select it, and then you can make a client. So both of these softwares can do it, and both of them can be used for making groups. So if you want to take your clients, put them in a group, and have certain policies towards them, you can. Next, we're going to talk about the DHCP option. So both Adguard Home and Pi-hole are going to offer you the option to have it as your DHCP server. So if it's not something you're familiar with, typically your router as a home router is set to also be your DHCP server. Some people might not have this. They might only run maybe a firewall in their house and does the routing for them as well. But then you will need a DHCP server. So I know some people that do this, that they have maybe like a pfSense box or something like that. They don't have it run as their DHCP server, but they're going to have Pi-hole or Adguard Home run as their DHCP server instead, because it offers a good option. So if you want to, you can come in here and you could set it so it's going to be your DHCP server. It would work just like it would in your router or any other piece of equipment you might configure to be your DHCP server. And you could also do this in Pi-hole. So you can come over here and tell Pi-hole that it wants to be your DHCP server, and then you would just point either one of these devices, whether it's going to be Pi-hole or Adguard Home, back to your router or your firewall and say, hey, this is my DHCP server, use this. And then it will query either Pi-hole or Adguard Home, whichever one you choose, to be your DHCP server, and that's how your addresses will get leased out for your whole network. Again, both of these do these. Adguard Home and Pi-hole does it. Either one works, but they're both good options. So the next big thing we're going to talk about, which is probably the biggest part of both of these, is the ad list and how actual ads and everything's getting blocked using Adguard Home or Pi-hole. So in Adguard Home, it's a little bit different. They have default lists that are provided, and usually the default list is a minimal list. It's only going to block so much. As you can see, this was the default list at the top, and it's only going to block about 54,000 different things. It goes by rules, where Pi-hole goes by, if I come over here, you can see it has domains on the ad list. So that's how Pi-hole does it. So you can see in here I have all these Pi-hole lists. I actually got these from Firebog. So this is the difference, is that in Pi-hole you actually got to go to a different site. You have to grab more and add them that way. Where in Adguard you could just click add block list. You can choose from the list, or you get a custom list. So there's probably GitHubs out there that have them, but you could also use their default lists, and not the default list, the extra list that they provide that you can be implemented. So you can actually come in here and you can select different ones based off their topic. They have regional, and then they have security focused ones, so you could just check it off and then you would add it, and then it's all set. And here you would have to click to update. Now this is something you might want to do periodically. As you can see, 3 lists were updated. I'm not sure of the update policy on this, whereas in Pi-hole, all these lists that you have are updated every Sunday using Gravity. So if you're not familiar, Pi-hole has Gravity, and this is how you would update your block domains. So all of these lists that you have in here, as they get updated, it doesn't automatically get pushed to Pi-hole. It would have to actually get pushed using where is it? Here it is, Gravity. But Gravity automatically works every Sunday by updating your Pi-hole list. So it's not something in Pi-hole you have to do automatically, whereas in Adguard Home, I'm pretty sure it's something you actually would have to do manually as new updates become available. Next, we'll talk about the allow list. So in Adguard, it's pretty straightforward. You just come make an allow list, and you would enter the name you're going to call it and the domain. Or if you need an absolute target, you would just give the absolute target with the URL, and that's how you would add it to whitelist the URL. Pi-hole, it's going to be similar. You would add the domain, give it a comment. You could give it a wildcard, so it would whitelist the whole site, and then here you would either whitelist or blacklist it. So to do the blacklist in Adguard Home, I'm going to say blacklist because it goes back and forth. I might say blacklist, I might say blocklist. It's the same thing. It's just at work, when I typically use like the next generation firewalls and we're blocking stuff, it used to be the blacklist, and that's why we call it that way. So it's just me throwing around a term that I use often. Don't be confused because they both mean the same thing. But if you're going to be blocking a specific domain, you can. It makes it really simple. It's just like how it is in Pi-hole. You would just add the domain and hit add to blacklist or add to whitelist. They would do it that way. Similarly, in Adguard Home, you would add the URL and you could add it to the blacklist, or you could add it to the whitelist. So you come over here and it's the allow list in the Adguard Home, and it would just add it over here. So you do it that way, and there's your domain. So both services are going to be able to blacklist and allow certain things, or they're not. So both of them work that way. So the next thing that we're going to talk about in Adguard Home and in Pi-hole is the DNS rewrites or making local DNS records. Now this is something I've never been able to get to work in Pi-hole. Everybody swears it does, but I've always seen it needs additional configuration. You gotta make local pointers. It's just too much effort for me to be interested in doing it. I want something that works easily, and in Adguard Home it does. I can come over here, I can add a DNS rewrite, I can tell it the domain, so you would just make it whatever you want, and then the target IP address. So you can see over here I made adguardhome.me, which is actually the URL I'm using to access my local Adguard Home server, and it points it right back to the IP address, and it works. Whereas in Pi-hole you would have to come over here into local DNS, you would have to configure some options, and truthfully I've never been able to get this to work. I know somebody who has, and they had to make local pointers and stuff like that. It's just too much effort. If it doesn't work easily, it's not something that I want to use. So that's how that worked. I guess the big difference we're going to have between Adguard Home and Pi-hole, that Pi-hole doesn't offer this directly, is you could block services. So you can actually come into Adguard Home, and if you want to block people from accessing NVIDIA, Origin, Rakuten, PlayStation, and let's say Instagram, you could do it that way. You could actually come in here and you could block all these services and people won't be able to access it. So let's say I want to block AliExpress. We're going to come over here, we're going to save it. We're going to go AliExpress, and if I try to go on their site, it's going to tell me you can't find that site. If I come back over here and turn it off, do that, and then we come back over here, we'll give it a second to process, and here now you can see AliExpress is accessible again. So this is the difference between Pi-hole and Adguard, that we can easily block certain services or websites that they have listed. It's a pretty big list, but obviously it's not everything, but it is a nice feature that you can just come in here and add it, whereas in Pi-hole you gotta do a little more work. You would have to come over here and add the site to the domains, and you would have to either blacklist it or whitelist it, however you want to do it, based on groups and stuff like that. So a little bit different, and I think it's a little bit nicer in Adguard Home that I can just come over here and check off a box instead of having to come in here, add a domain, and then try to get it so the blacklist actually works properly. I've had issues with this in the past as well. Typically I just use this to whitelist stuff because it's sites that I need to hit. But that's, you might have a different experience. I can't speak for everybody, but I do like that it has this feature. This is really nice and makes it a lot easier to work with. Both of these services are going to offer query logs where you can come in here and you can query all your DNS queries. Let's say query as many times as we can. But you can come over here and you can query your DNS records to see what information is being pulled. Pi-hole offers the same thing, and you can actually come in here, and as you see the logs, if something's being blocked, you can come over here, you can whitelist it. If it's being allowed and you want to block it, you can block it. You can do the same thing in Adguard Home. Come over here, you can either block it, gives you the options how you want to do it, or you can come over here and you can unblock it. So it works out both ways. Both of these have the same features in doing the query log. So I know I gave a lot of different information about both of these services, comparing them, contrasting them, which can do what can't. Really what it comes down at the end of the day is whichever one you like better, you should use. If you like Pi-hole, use Pi-hole. If you like Adguard Home, use Adguard Home. I haven't had to use the support for Adguard Home yet, but I have used Pi-hole support quite a bit in the past, and it's difficult. You either need to go on their subreddit or you need to go on the forums, and my experiences are that people who aren't usually very helpful. They always push you to read the documentation, and sometimes the documentation isn't very clear on how to do certain things. So it is hit or miss. You might run into somebody that's really helpful one day, or you might not. I don't know. But the support's mixed probably on both of them. I can't speak for Adguard Home, like I said, because I haven't used the support yet. But it really comes down to whichever product you like more, use it. You can implement them really easily. You can put it on a Raspberry Pi. You can run it off a Docker container. And if you're running off a Docker, you don't like it, just turn it off, remove the container, and then put Pi-hole back on. Just turn it back on. I say try both of them out. Watch both my videos how to set it up, and then run it in your house and see what you like better. Both of them are going to work, like I said, and it just comes down to whichever one you like better. I've been using both of them recently, and both of them seem to work really good, and I don't know which one I'm going to stick with, but we're going to find out. So I'm going to keep working. We'll probably come back to this in the future, and we'll reflect on what's my thoughts about Adguard in the future, and what's my thoughts about Pi-hole in the future. So I hope you guys liked this video. If you did, make sure to drop a like, subscribe so you can see the next videos, and maybe go back and watch some of my old videos, especially if you don't know how to set up Pi-hole and you want to. And I have a video of how to set up Adguard Home. Also, I have a Discord server, so I'll put a link in the description how to join, and join up when we come in and we can talk about homelab and different projects, or if you need help with one of the videos that I might have made, we can go in there and talk about it. We can help get your project running. So I'll see you guys in the next video.